Then, one day, we were shooting an episode in season 2 entitled Gordy's Birthday. And, boom. So one of the chimps that plays Gordy just hit his limit. And it was 6 minutes and 13 seconds of havoc.
Okay, ready, go. Let's go.
Hello and welcome. Welcome and hello. This is Wait, You Haven't Seen? It's a show where we talk about movies, and specifically, we talk about a movie at least one of us has never seen before. I'm your host, Travis, a.k.a. TV's Travis, and this is episode number 241. Our movie this week was 2022's Nope, directed by Jordan Peele, and here to talk with me about it, an old friend of mine I haven't talked to in quite some time from the world of reality television. It's Paul Boticelli. Paul, how you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on your show.
Absolutely. You know, I have wanted to have you on the show kind of since I started it. You were one of those people I'm like, man, I should get a hold of Paul. He would be awesome to sit and talk with, because we used to talk movie stuff all the time when we were down in Orlando when you were doing film school. So it just was one of those things where I would think about it and then I would forget. And then I'd see your name pop up somewhere. I'd see, you know, something on Instagram and I'm like, I got to get a hold of him again. And then I'd forget. And it just kept this cycle going. And finally I got around to it. And I'm so glad that I did. And then you said, let's do Nope. And I just saw Get Out for the first time a couple of weeks ago. So I'm on a big Jordan Peele kick right now. It seems perfect to me. So this was my first time seeing it. Had you seen this before?
I had not. I was most familiar with him from his work with Key and Peele.
Yeah.
And watching these older skits now that he's gone into filmmaking, you can see where the little horror movie roots started.
Yeah.
They did a little skit about Family Matters, which was pretty great.
Oh.
I don't know if anybody's familiar with it. I'm sure you are, but in that skit, Key plays a producer on the show Family Matters. He's all coked up, and Peele plays Reggie, the main character. I don't recall the actor's name, but he plays the main character.
Yeah.
And he's complaining that he's not getting enough screen time, that Urkel's getting all the screen time. And then it takes a very, very dark turn.
Yes.
From there. It just straddles a line between horror and comedy. And you can see, okay, I can totally see how he segued right into horror movies. From that.
And it was interesting because when I watched Get Out, which was his first film, and I thought, wow, this is the guy from Key and Peele doing horror. And you're right. If you go back and look at some of those old sketches, you totally see where his love of like horror films comes from, and that he slowly worked it in there. And like he can go down these dark paths. This was a pretty cool movie. Now, I didn't see it initially. It just sort of, it looked interesting to me, but I just didn't have the chance to get out and see it. And so then it kind of went out of sight, out of mind. But then and then I'd hear about it every so often, and I'd hear about Get Out, and so when the opportunity to watch Get Out came, I jumped on that, and that, if you haven't seen it, is fantastic. I love Get Out; it is so good. Yeah. So getting to watch this, I was excited because Daniel Kaluuya's in it, who is he's phenomenal in Get Out. He's amazing in this. I love him in Across the Spider-Verse as Hobie Brown. His voice work in that is so cool. It was fun to see that movie because he got to use his natural accent, and he sounds so different than if you've only ever seen him in like this or Get Out, it'll throw you for a loop at first the way he sounds normally.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because as I was watching the movie last night, I could hear faint little traces of his actual British accent peeking through. He does a great American accent, don't get me wrong, but I could still hear a little bit of it when he's, I believe it was when he was on the stairs and he was having a conversation with his sister.
Yeah.
Who's played by Keke Palmer, who's fantastic in this movie.
Oh, she's so good in this too. I mean,
I could hear hear little bitty pieces of his British accent poking through.
Yeah, and it poked through a little bit too here and there in Get Out, but he does a pretty good job of hiding it. He does a good American accent. And he and Keke Palmer they carry this movie. Like, this movie doesn't work without the two of them. But I think what worked so well for me is the brother-sister relationship.
Yeah.
Felt natural, felt real. Like, they felt like actual siblings.
It totally did. Like, she's all high energy, he's low key.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I've seen siblings exactly like that.
Yeah, and you
different
didn't.
temperaments.
Yeah, and you
complement
don't get the faked like Hollywood siblings, right? It didn't feel like that. They felt pretty realistic to me, and they just had great chemistry on screen. Yeah. And I love subtle things they do with their characters too, like the whole last sequence we'll kind of get to later on, but the whole final sequence, Daniel's character, who's named OJ for Otis Jr., and he's wearing a bright orange shirt, and Kiki's Emerald is wearing green. You know, not super subtle, but also like it's kind of cool to have them do that. And they're just they're so good in this. I think Daniel Kaluuya in this, the character of OJ, I love because he's so laid back and seemingly so calm, even though you know he's freaked out all the time, and he has like natural reactions to things in a horror movie, which you don't normally see, right? Like horror movies especially, they're almost always caricatures, and they make the dumb decisions, and he's just like, nope, not doing that. Like, Nope is such a perfect title.
Yeah. Yeah, I was really fascinated just watching him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just the way he looks at things and reacts, not in a crazy way, but just, like low key, okay, processing it type of way.
Yeah.
Contrasted with his sister, who is like, much more high energy, more intense than he is.
Mm-hmm. And
he's just
like, we know people that everybody knows somebody who's like that, who can process information and remain calm in these weird, like crazy situations. If you're in your car on ice and you slide on a little bit of ice, and somebody can remain calm while something like that's going on. Like, that's what I got from OJ. He's one of those that, even though he's probably freaking out like crazy inside, he's able to keep it restrained, which was, and then he'll have some great moment, like when he's in the truck and he looks out and he sees the thing above him, so he just closes the door and he's like, nope, and then he sits there for a second and then he leans over and he locks the door. Like, that right there is like, no, that's a completely normal reaction to that. Even though it will do nothing, you still lock that door. I loved that.
I like how he dealt with that particular situation in that scene.
Mm-hmm.
He's just like, well, you can go anywhere.
Yeah.
I'm in this truck.
This is where I live now. Brandon Perea as Angel was also a lot of fun. I started off hating him.
Yeah, he was interesting. What was really interesting, okay, we used to live in Burbank.
Okay.
So when I saw Fry's electronics show up, the Burbank location with the UFO that crash landed into the front of the store, that was they themed all their stores.
Yep.
And the Burbank theme was 50s sci-fi. So seeing that pop up after it's been closed for like 3 or 4 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So seeing that, I was like, all right, yes, that's awesome. I love that.
I thought that was a nice touch. And his character, when you first meet him, he's your kind of every retail worker, right? He's been broken by the retail system, and he's just, how can I help you? Did you find everything you need? Like, not even making eye contact with them, all of that. But by the end of the movie, I loved his character because he somehow managed to like fit in perfectly with OJ and Emerald.
Yeah, it definitely felt like maybe like he could have been a cousin or an extended family member by that point in the story.
Like, just somehow he just like, and he went from even being, they didn't even want him there, and then he just sort of shows up, and then he shows up the next day after like spying on their cameras because he was so interested in it. And I'm thinking, oh, this might lead to something, and it doesn't really, but at the same time, he just sort of like integrates himself, and it works, and it makes for a really cool dynamic because he's sort of being that that kind of audience surrogate character of like because he gets to have the exposition moment about the UFOs versus UAPs, and he has that great moment when the thing comes over the house and he grabs the kitchen knife and he just goes up to everyone's like, we're in trouble, and immediately dives under the table with the knife just shaking like, yep, nope, that's exactly what I would do. So he was a lot of fun. Some of the other cast members, Stephen Yeun is Ricky Juke Park. Boy, is he good or what?
He's terrific.
There was a lot. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say there was a lot especially between the characters of Ricky and OJ, a lot of acting without dialogue going on, a lot of very subtle things that they were doing, like just moments where they would deliver a line and you could see there was a lot more going on than at the surface level. Like when Ricky's telling the story about what happened with Gordy and the chimp, and that first time he's telling the story, and he's telling it through the lens of like, well, on SNL they did the sketch, right? They did the parody sketch of it, and you can kind of see like that's sort of the only way he can really tell the story now. So because of the trauma that happened to him, and then we get to revisit it through his eyes later, and just that shot that transitions from the young version of Ricky to the current version of Ricky, and he's sitting there, he's got the microphone taped on already, and he's getting ready to do his presentation, and just the look on his face said so much without him having to say a word.
Yeah, and audiences got a good taste of that when he was back on Walking Dead. That's why he was.
Oh, right.
One of my personal favorite characters on the show. He's just able to project strength and vulnerability. And you get a taste of that in this movie as well.
Yeah.
Also, it was really cool to see David Keith.
Oh, yes.
Or Keith David.
Keith David.
Keith David. Okay.
Yep.
He wasn't in it for too long, unfortunately, but the screen time that he had, he was terrific. Also, whom else?
The thing with Keith David is he's got that voice that you instantly recognize his voice, and his presence is great. So yeah, he's a few minutes of screen time. One of the visuals of this movie that will be burned into my brain though is the shot of him in the hospital bed.
Oh God, yeah.
Because that was, but just getting somebody like him, and plus, honestly, the way with the kind of costuming, and then just Daniel Kaluuya looked enough like Keith David that I'm like, no, I buy that they're father and son. Like, there's enough there to kind of link them together. And then to have one quick like flashback memory of him later on, where he gets to kind of basically lay out what's going on to the audience in a way. I really liked that. Keith David's great. I do always make the joke of, is it Keith David or David Keith? And I have to tell people, I have to be like, Keith David is the voice of the Gargoyles. David Keith was the dad in the Daredevil movie with Ben Affleck. And that's how I can tell them apart.
Though I always remember him from Officer and a Gentleman for some reason.
Oh,
maybe because that's the first thing I saw him in.
Yep, that would do it. Yeah. I also love seeing Michael Wincott in this.
Yes. That's the other actor.
Yes, I adore Michael Wincott. He's got another one with a incredibly iconic voice.
Oh God, yeah.
Going all the way back to Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. This guy is Ginsborn. He was in 1492, Conquest of Paradise. Like, he did a bunch of stuff. The Crow. I love him as Top Dollar in The Crow. I liked him in Alien Resurrection. Most people don't like that movie. I don't hate that movie, but he's a lot of fun.
I hate it. I love it. Yeah.
I mean, it's of the first 4 Alien movies, it's probably the weakest or tied for the weakest with 3. It has its problems, but like, he's not a problem in it. He's great.
No.
I actually kind of like the fact that his IMDb photo is now his character poster from this movie. that
Oh,
that sort of cracks me up. But he's
I'll have to check that out.
for such a short amount of time that he's in the movie, he's got some iconic moments. He's so okay. Did you notice the parallels to Jaws watching this? Because I definitely got a lot of Hitchcock feel to it from it, and I also got a lot of Jaws kind of feeling from it in some of its structuring. Okay. And Michael Wincott's character of Antlers was Quint. He was the Quint of this movie. Yeah. Right down to getting a little sing-songy moment with the Purple People Eater, which I may or may not have captured. I might play later. But I got these like Jaws feelings from it. So it was cool to see him because as the movie went on, I thought, oh, he'll just have this. I saw his name in the main titles, but I wasn't sure how big of a character he would be. And the movie sort of ignored him for a stretch. And then we had, because he shows up at the beginning, then we get the second scene where she calls him up, where Emerald calls him, which was, I love that scene. And then I thought, okay, that's all we're going to get from him. Like, it's a cool little role for him to play. So for
I like
him,
how he's at the moviola flatbed looking at nature B-roll.
Yeah, that was great. Oh, I was like, that's
the tiger getting constricted.
Yep.
I think the tiger wound up losing actually, which is interesting.
Yeah, and like all the shots of the eyes, and all of that, and like there was something with him because in the beginning when they're doing the commercial shoot and he's checked out, like he's there but he's not. He just doesn't care. And it's like, oh yeah, no, I could see that working. And then for that scene, and then when they cut back to him seeing the news and hearing, where it was in California and all that, and it piqued his interest. I was like, ooh, he's coming back. He's going to do some more. So I dug that quite a bit. He was a fun character to have. Plus he had that like old, hand crank homemade cameras. Like cameras he made himself.
You know what the model of that camera was? I
have no idea.
I don't know if they mentioned it in the film or not.
Because he had two. He had that bigger one, and then he had the little handheld, like 16 millimeter, that he was working on.
Right, the one that the Fry's electronic guy wound up taking.
Yeah. I looked over like trivia and stuff. I didn't see anything mentioning, and usually internet sleuths are pretty quick at like telling you what models of things are. So I didn't find anything, but that was and it was cool because obviously with the way that the thing messes with electronics, to have something with no electricity needed is perfect. Also, it's kind of interesting that this was Jordan Peele's first film he did on film. His first movie he shot not digitally.
Was Get Out shot on digital?
Apparently, yeah. Because I read that this was the first one he shot on film, and he shot some of it with IMAX and a good amount of it with 70 millimeter. Actually,
it certainly paid dividends in the look of the thing because the cinematography is terrific.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get to that because I have some things to say there. One other cast member I just wanted to mention real quick was in the beginning of it the like set. I don't know if he was the AD or the who he was running around the commercial set was Eddie Jemison, who I love from the Oceans trilogy. He was Linus in those, and I heard his voice and I immediately was like, oh, I know that guy. And he that's all I can think of him from is the Oceans 11, 12, and 13. But I loved him so much in that as that like high-strung tech guy. So it was fun to see him in here. So cinematography, you mentioned how cool it was. Mm-hmm. They did a lot of day for night in this.
Oh yeah.
But I read that, and who was the cinematographer? They had his name because
I believe that was Christopher Nolan's DP.
Is it? I know it was a cool name. Like it was a name that just, I was like, this is the coolest name I've ever seen. Hoyt van Hoytema.
Yes.
Did the cinematography, and he developed a new way to do day for night using two cameras. And removing, what was it? I read something about he took the took the IR filter off of one of the cameras, and it allowed and they knew they were going to replace the skies anyway, so it really didn't matter. They just wanted a lot of really good detail in the shots that they could use day for night, and it works because it looks so good. All those night shots with OJ and the horses and everything just looked amazing.
I'm curious, since they're out in it's not necessarily the desert, but it's an arid countryside, and the moon has a pretty clear view, and I would guess a lot of that ambient light would cause, I don't know, noise, not noise pollution, light pollution.
Yeah.
So it would look like the way it looked in the movie. I mean, I bought it. It looked good enough to me.
Well, it was cool too because they were doing a very stylized look to everything anyway, so it fit. And he was, he did. Oh, what was the other thing I read that he worked on? Okay, he is the guy working with Nolan now for like Tenet, Interstellar, Dunkirk. Okay, Ad Astra. That was another one where he did some day for night work.
Okay.
The guy's good. I mean, he knows his stuff. And Oppenheimer he worked on. So yeah, he's kind of Nolan's. Sort of replaced. Was it Wally Pfister did a lot of Nolan's earlier work?
He left to go direct that wonderful movie with Johnny Depp. I don't remember the name of it.
Oh, was that the? Oh yes, I know which one you're talking about.
Was it Transmission?
Was
that the name of it?
Transcendence?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Didn't
should have stayed with
Yeah. Well, sometimes people want to branch out and it doesn't always work. I mean, they can't all be Michael Giacchino going on and doing Werewolf by Night. That was amazing.
I know, right?
But yeah, like just the look of everything and the way they used the day for night, the way they would some of the sky work, like the cloud where Jean Jacket, because the alien thing is, they name it Jean Jacket, and the cloud in the background. When I was going back through after watching it the first time, I went back through to just kind of skim over it again, maybe find any cool audio clips to get, and I noticed the cloud the second time, and I'm like, that's really good.
I only had time to watch this once, but I knew it's like, this is something that has a lot of rewatchability. So you have to watch it multiple times just to pick up some of the things that you missed the first go round. At least for me, I'm a pretty thick viewer. The first time I view a movie, I'm just watching it.
Oh yeah.
And I need another viewing or two to pick up on the stuff that I missed the first go round. But yeah, the cloud was great.
Yeah, and I think that's that's the best way to watch a movie. Just take it in for what it is the first time. See what happens. I find myself enjoying movies a lot more because I do that. I don't try to make it something else. I just try to be like, all right, what do you got for me? Come on, give it to me, and then we'll talk afterwards. And and it usually goes pretty well. It's pretty, like, this will be the 242nd movie I've done for this particular podcast. Of those, I can count on one hand the number of them I don't really want to watch again. One of those was so M. Night Shyamalan's The Last Airbender. I was just bored to tears, and I loved what I have seen of the cartoon series. I loved so much, and that movie just felt like a wet fart. The other one, and I might give this one a chance, but it was sort of a similar thing, was I just could not get into Miami Vice with Colin Farrell and Jamie Foxx.
Yeah, it's so radically different from the show. I think I appreciate that Michael Mann was like, no, that's the show. This is the movie. Miami has changed since we did the show, so this is going to be different. But when you're making a movie of Miami Vice, I'm sorry, there's certain preconceived ideas of what it's going to look and sound like. So when you gave the audience that radically different take on the material, they were just like, what is this?
And
So,
if it hadn't been called Miami Vice, if they hadn't been named Crockett and Tubbs, I could have gotten into it,
yeah,
I think, a little bit more. But I think my comment in when I first saw it was like this. It felt like a movie made by somebody who hated the show Miami Vice. I'm like, but it was Michael Mann. He's
yeah,
responsible for both. Like, how does this happen? But you make decisions. It was just one of those. I just couldn't get into it. Um,
yeah. I watched like the first couple minutes of it. I was like, nah, sorry.
I got bored is what happened. Like
Yeah.
I just got bored with it. But that's kind of it. Like most of the movies that I've seen for this show, especially the stuff I've seen for the first time, I've
Mhm.
been so pleasantly surprised by. Either because I sort of had an idea that it was it was talked up a lot, or I've had some people bring me some real like diamonds in the rough. There's a movie I saw, a Japanese film called Fish Story, that
Oh,
I could tell you what the plot is of the movie, and it will make zero sense, and it will not help you at all in seeing it. But it's amazing.
oh, excellent.
Um,
Is
basically,
it more?
so it jumps through time, and it tells
Mhm.
some separate stories that are all loosely linked together by this punk band in 1975 in Japan that write a
Okay,
song, and that song eventually saves the world from a comet.
nice.
How, you'll have to watch the movie and figure it out, but it was like that movie
Okay.
ended and I was just like, more people need to see this. This is amazing. And you can't really find it anywhere, unfortunately, but I might have a way that you could see it, and it's really good. Plus it's got one of the most like punk rock moments ever. Like
Sweet.
just the spirit of punk rock. I love that movie. I finally saw like Amelie was one that I
Mhm.
was just blown. I'm like, this is great. And then I found out that the director of Amelie directed Alien
Yeah.
Resurrection, and
Resurrection,
my brain folded in on itself for a minute because I'm like, these two things don't match.
Well,
Um,
had you seen City of Lost Children?
I had not before seeing Amelie, but that's also what I found is that I'm a big fan of Jean Pierre Jeunet. Is what I found
Yeah.
out. It just I didn't know it until my friend Amy kind of forced me. She's like, "You're going to watch Amelie because it is my favorite movie ever, and I will make you watch it." And she was right. It was amazing. So it's so much fun to watch and like taking a movie for what it is. That's I think one of the things that
Yeah.
there's a lot of discourse, especially discourse online about movies and look, do what you want, like what you like what you don't like, but there's times where I feel like people make that into a personality of like, I don't like this thing, I don't like the MCU. Well, there's nothing really wrong with the MCU. It's just it is what it is. Could they
Yeah.
do some things better? There are things they could do better. Yes. But at
It's
the
a
same
comic book
time,
company, folks.
yeah. At the same time, like what they're putting out is still decent entertainment. Right? There's nothing
Hmm.
like inherently unwatchable about an MCU film. Like
No.
I have seen truly unwatchable things, and that ain't it. I have seen movies that look like they were shot for a slab of beer and like just no money whatsoever and no idea of what story they were trying to tell. That's unwatchable.
Yeah.
Not liking something is completely different. But the thing that I have found is that taking a movie on its merits versus trying to force it into something makes a big difference. The expectations we bring in, like Nope did fairly well at the box office. It was pretty
Yeah.
well received. Not quite. I don't think it's quite as good as Get Out. I think Get Out is a little bit better of a overall movie. I think the technical aspects of Nope, you can see how much in the span of 7 years, how much Jordan Peele has grown as a filmmaker.
Yeah.
I,
I would say I would actually add to that in that he directed a lot of the Key and Peele skits. And you can see they're like little movies, like
mhm.
the production value on the Key and Peele um, skits, like the one with Jesus and
Oh yeah,
Mary's Pimp.
yeah, yep.
The cinematography and the production design, just in those little 8, 9, 10 minute long skits, just look amazing. So he had all that as like training ground. So,
Yeah. That's true. It's great to see somebody, grow like that. And then you also can see his influences. And I appreciate that because one thing I really appreciated is, as I was getting through this movie, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm seeing some parallels with Jaws. I'm seeing some parallels with Close Encounters of the Third Kind. You can tell he liked Spielberg. You can tell like his love of horror movies, and the way he works stuff in, I feel like is very deft. He has a very deft hand in his homages to things.
I love the Scorpion King crew jacket.
that was so good, and I love that moment with OJ and Emerald where she's remembering the story as the horse got sold to a production for a Western, and he's like, nah, it was a Scorpion King. It wasn't a Western. Like, it's worse than you think, sis. Like, and just how bad it was on that. That was great.
Yeah.
I love how OJ is. He's still got an old flip phone, a newer version of one, but it's an old flip phone, and just the way, like his look and the way he carried himself and the way he moved felt like he really got into that character. And I guess also he had a pretty bad horse riding accident a few years before this movie, and supposedly had to work through a little bit of that to get back on a horse. And I would never have known that because he looked so natural on the horse.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great to see, it's a whole lot of fun to see filmmakers get to do the project that they want and then be able to take the movie on its merits. Like, there were all sorts of theories about what's Nope about because the marketing campaigns kind of
tight-lipped.
Yeah, well, they didn't let anything out. But the trailers gave you kind of directions to go in, and it was really kind of fun. I'm not big on like fan theories myself. Because I think most of the time it's like, okay, it's kind of fun, but like you don't really know. And when it's and fan theories tend to go way further, right? They'll take like,
I remember when Cloverfield, just before Cloverfield came out.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It was insanity.
Oh, that
just
one
all the theories, and it's, oh my god. But yeah,
and there were a ton of them for this too, which they're fun, but then you see the movie and it's like, okay, none of that was true. But and too, Jordan Peele does this great job of layering in kind of his commentary within the structure of the film. In this case, it was a lot about spectacle and how addicted to spectacle we are as just a society. And I kind of felt that because like we are. There's a lot of that goes on. Like what happened with Ricky Jupe was a spectacle, and he's never going to outrun. Like he's never going to outrun that now. This guy is tied to that forever for being on that show and the trauma that caused him. And so it makes him feel like he is somehow invincible.
I like how Jordan Peele had him externalize that in a sense, where he had that closed off paid tour wing of all the memorabilia from that show. He said, I normally charge for this. And he opens the door to like a little secret office. It's just all that stuff.
Yeah.
Where he's like, okay.
And then is there even that moment where when he's doing his presentation in front of the little crowd, which I love that the first time we're going into his office, his wife is on the phone and she's telling the person on the phone, yeah, we managed to squeeze out a couple more press passes. And then later on when that scene takes place, there's like a quarter of the stands full. But even in that moment where he starts to tell the story and he turns around and he has to hype himself up for a second and you barely hear him say, but he's like, you're chosen. Like he honestly believes him surviving unscathed, that whole thing with Gordy the chimp, that somehow, and there's the whole thing with the shoe in the background that was standing straight up.
The shoe, yeah.
And it gives him this kind of feeling of invulnerability. And so when he discovered what this jean jacket, this thing, it made him think that he could somehow have some form of control in that situation when he clearly didn't. and
Nope.
had no idea. So I thought that was a very interesting way to do that, because it's his way of dealing with his trauma, and it didn't work out so well at all.
Yeah, it's Stephen Ewan.
Yeah.
Again, showing that vulnerability like he did on Walking Dead. It just
Mhm.
instantly endears you.
Oh yeah.
It's part of his talent as an actor.
And then he has that very, very subtle, almost smile right before it cuts away from him when he's looking up. And there's just a touch of a smile right at the end, almost like a relief. Like, okay, I don't have to deal with this stuff anymore. Like, it's over. Which then cuts to just that awful, awful scene where all those people from that are getting sucked into the alien. And at this point, you don't really know what it is yet. You still kind of think it's a ship.
Right.
And it turns out to not be a ship. And then you realize they're being digested. And it's terrible.
Yeah, that was very interesting. One of the things I really loved about this movie, I watched it on headphones, was the sound design.
Yes. Oh.
The sound design was something else. It was really off the charts. I'm like, wow. He put a lot of time and attention into the sound design. When they have sounds come in, come out, cut off. I don't know what kind of microphones they use, but the interior of the ship, I guess we can call it the esophagus of the ship.
Yeah.
When all being pushed up. It sounded real, like you're definitely in there with them. It's muffled and as they're being pushed along.
Yeah, it was the sound design, the way they would layer sounds together, and they would find sounds that would layer with the right frequencies, so parts of it would kind of overlap and almost cancel out, and so you weren't quite sure. Like, it was disconcerting because the screams, like, early on, before you get to see the creature jean jacket at all, and it's just like a shot. They hear the sounds of screaming from overhead. And they, out of context, it could sound like somebody screaming because they're riding like a roller coaster, or they're getting brutally, digested by a giant alien creature, and you couldn't really tell which one it was. Right? It's so ambiguous in the way the sound was that it's even more unsettling. And then to find out the context of it after the fact really hits home too.
More unsettling once you know,
Yeah. Oh, between the day for night, especially the day for night cinematography, but also like those wide shots, those big wide shots of the valley.
Lots of great vistas in the valley.
Yeah.
I've been to that stuff. I lived out in California for 12 years. I was like, I know exactly where that is. I know the exact environment. Love the horse farm.
Yeah.
Now each horse has its own nickname. Ghost was a great animal actor. All the horses.
I loved how Lucky was the only, because all of the title cards that would pop up, like those, they were almost like chapters, were different. There was Ghost and another one of the horses, but Lucky was the only one that survived. I thought that was kind of cool that Lucky would be the one to survive.
I think Lucky had the mask. Was it covering his eyes?
Yeah, he kind of
not looking a predator in the eyes. They made a big thing of that.
Yeah, he put like almost like blinders on. It was like you're right, a mask, which I thought was awesome.
Yeah.
I loved the realization that OJ has that, it's an animal. Oh, you can't look like.
That was a great scene. Yeah.
So good. As he's sitting on the horse and he's like hunching down and making himself, I'm not going to look at you. And then to explain that to everyone else. But at the same time, how difficult would that be not to sit there and stare at that thing, right? Like, and I also and I loved the design of Jean Jacket because it starts off looking mostly like a flying saucer. And just slightly off, like not perfectly sphere or perfectly round, but when they have the shot that it comes down low over when Lucky is in that enclosure, and the creature comes down and then kind of fans out almost like a stingray, because it kind of reminded me a
Yes,
little
I
bit
noticed that.
of of like a marine creature, but there's a ripple effect
Yeah,
from
it was like
like
yeah, exactly. It was like stingray and like a mylar balloon
yeah,
kind of effect with the ripple of the skin.
and that was
Um,
I noticed that and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool looking. So then when it does the whole thing at the finale, when it starts unfurling and making
it's
itself
completely
look all
fanned out. Yeah,
yeah, I was like, oh, that was a cool kind of foreshadow to that. It's not metallic. It's not a solid structure like we
yeah.
originally kind of thought it was. It was almost like, oh man, I'm trying to think the type of fish. It had some jellyfish like qualities to it, and sort of.
Yeah, definitely undersea creature. Just the way it completely unfurled out, and you're like trying to comprehend, like, wow, what am I looking at? This isn't the normal predatory creature
Yeah,
look,
the
which is part of Jordan Peele's subverting
yep,
expectations that he loves to do.
the square eye that almost looks like the matte box around a camera lens
Yeah,
was kind of
that's an
cool.
interesting idea.
I guess too, some of the inspiration for that creature's design was from Neon Genesis Evangelion, the angels in that,
I haven't
which
seen that.
I have not seen, so I don't know. But if they look like that, that's pretty pretty cool looking. Um, yeah, I really dug I dug the idea of subverting the trope of like it's still aliens, but instead of it being an alien ship and little aliens, which they do play too at one point, brilliant
Mhm.
scene. To then have it be no, it's a singular creature, and it's not when Angel is telling OJ like about UAPs and like there's three reasons that they would show up, right? They're either here to help us or the three theories. They're
Yeah,
aliens here to help us, they're humans from the distant future coming back to stop us from wrecking the planet, or they're trying to take
Mhm.
us over. And it's like it's none
yeah,
of those. It's literally just an animal that wants territory and wants food. And I thought that was a great subversion of what was going on.
yeah. I really like that whole scene where he's giving him the rules. You enter into an agreement with a predator.
Oh
Really love
yeah,
that one.
that was a good one.
Yeah.
Um, the scene in the barn might be my favorite scene in the movie when
Mhm.
he goes out there to look, because it is exactly the scene you're expecting when he gets up and walks out to that barn. And
Mhm.
it doesn't end the way you're expecting it to end, and it so perfectly subverts the ideas that are going on in it while maintaining and keeping the plot exactly where it was going to go the whole time. And it's so well done because it allows itself to breathe and take its time, and it doesn't feel like it's moving us away. It moving us away from the plot. It doesn't feel like it's shoehorned in or hurts the pacing of the movie at all either. And honestly, those kids got off light. Only one of them got punched. But it was so like I could imagine being in the theater seeing this and all the people in the theater just being nope, nope, like
Yeah,
as that whole scene is unfolding.
yeah, that definitely had the aliens that the kids are playing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Definitely reminded me of the aliens from Close Encounters, as you had
Yeah.
mentioned before. I was like, that's totally what the aliens look like, and they were all played by little kids in masks.
Yeah.
So
And
that we're all winking a nod to that.
plus just like the creepy way when he goes down and he shuts the light off, the light and the sprinkler off, and he starts walking
Mhm.
away, and when he thinks he hears something and turns around, you don't see anything at first. And it's that
Yeah,
really slow reveal of the one standing up. And you're like,
I really like
because I'm watching it thinking, wait, is there something there? I couldn't tell for the first like 10 seconds. And I'm like,
that.
oh
Yeah.
no, there is, oh no, the aliens have shown up. Like, what's going to happen now? And then you get the other head that pops out of one of the horse stalls. And they were doing the whole like wearing a gorilla costume with just a mask,
Mhm.
which is great. And those masks, the alien mask almost reminded me of later on when we get the flashback to the Gordy's house stuff with the chimp. There's a part of the tracking shot coming in goes around a corner, and you see like the Panaflex cameras and the film canisters on top of the Panaflex cameras kind of had the look of like those alien masks that they were wearing, like that kind of big wide and then little dots in there.
Also in that scene, I think you could see like little gloves on the floor.
Yeah.
Like little hair.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it was good. I dug the hell out of that scene though. That whole thing and again, OJ has the perfect reaction to it. When he sees something moving, he's just like, nope, I'm out. And he starts to walk away and then stops himself like, no, I should probably try to get a video of this, but I'm going to do it from a ways back and around a corner. And then he just clocks that kid. I'm like, oh man. And the Gordy scene too, the Gordy's house scene was another one where, and there was a lot of like one-shot tracks in this. Throughout the movie, there's a few of them that I didn't notice the first time. Like it just flowed with the movie, so I wasn't even thinking about when they go to Fry's. That whole shot of them walking with the cart is all one take, and I didn't think about it until I was watching it again the second time. And I'm like, oh, they haven't cut. Like they go from them walking all the way up to the counter in a single take, and it's really well done. And then there's the whole Gordy's house, and it's the one take coming in and moving around, and I loved that. There was a couple of them with either riding the horse or riding the motorcycle at the end, where they would do that too. Or OJ when he goes to the Jupiter Ranch to get Lucky back. His whole entrance into that all the way through as a one shot. There's just a lot of those, and they were really, really well done. But I really liked that one coming into Gordy's house set, because we've already been told the story of what happened.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of set up for like, ooh, this isn't going to be good. And it's the terror of not knowing exactly what you're going to see when you come around the corner. And like the emptiness and the quiet, the sound, like you mentioned sound design, how good it was. And the sound design in that scene, the lack of sound in certain parts and the sounds you do hear and how awful they are. And because you don't see it, makes your brain fill in the blanks and just makes it even worse. Because you're like, ooh, man, what is that chimp doing to, whoever? Like, yikes.
Yes. When she was, the lady was laying down and he's laying into her, you don't see it. It sounds like either he's chewing off her face or he's tearing her esophagus out. You don't know at the time. You don't see it, but yeah. It's the best way to do it sometimes is to not show it and just use like a little sound effect.
It really is. I talked about this with recently on another show I'm on. We talked about Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. And
love that movie.
I do too. And there's a kill in that where one of the android things goes to the like coroner's assistant in the lab, and you see him reach over and pick up the power drill. And the shot has her, he knocks her down and he like gets on top of her, and you know what's happening. He's using the drill on her, but all you see is from behind of him and her legs struggling. And then like his arm come down. You never see the drill impact. It doesn't change from that. It's so much more, I think, terrifying and visceral to only have the sound and that image, because your brain just immediately creates the image of just how awful what just happened to this woman is. So I'm with you on that. Like, a lot of times less is more. There are times where you want to see the effects, and you want to see, you want to see what Tom Savini came up with for this movie or whatever thing it is. But man, sometimes just having it like obscured like that, like when Gordy the chimp chases down the guy who for some reason comes back on the set thinking he's gonna, I don't know what he was thinking.
Gonna talk him out of it.
Yeah, but he chases him into the other room, and so all you get is the door swinging, and
Yeah.
you just catch just some movement of the chimp in the other room, like slamming down, but it's through a table and like a chair and part of the tablecloth and
And
all
the
of that.
door's revolving from the motion, yeah.
Yeah,
And it's all from the point of view under the table of the
yeah.
kid.
So
So it all felt more real that way.
it did. It felt more real and it felt more traumatizing, and I love
Yeah.
that. Like I want my movies to. The worst thing a movie can be is boring, and this definitely does not have that problem because it's making you feel things too. Like that's what I want in my movies. That's why I think as I've gotten older, I've started appreciating things like David Lynch that I probably didn't. I just wouldn't have. Not even so much understood, but just like connected to something like Mulholland Drive 20 years ago. But when I saw it earlier this year, and I was like, this is one of the greatest things I've ever seen because it made me feel things and it made me think about things. And I love that. So this was definitely, there were moments in this that had a similar effect with the way like it just, it puts stuff out there that makes you feel something, and it's open to interpretation as well.
Totally.
I enjoy that. I was trying to think of some notes I had. Oh, so when the TMZ guy rides up, just out of
I
nowhere.
love this helmet.
Yes, his helmet was great. But when
Remind me of Daft Punk or something. I don't know. It was all silver with like one eye hole.
Yeah, it was definitely a paparazzi helmet. Like, got to have it clear so you can see that camera. But when he takes off, and I just love that line. It's like, what's going to happen when an electric motorcycle going 60 miles an hour hits an anti-electric field going in the other direction? And then they do it in a wide shot. And it was a wide shot, and then the sound when he gets launched off the bike, that yelp that he made, killed me. I cackled when that happened. It was so perfectly, like the timing of it was perfect, and because they go out to the wide shot, and I'm like, oh, cool, they're gonna do it in a wide shot, and then you just hear this as he falls off the bike, and it just wrecked me. It was so good. But I love doing that in a wide shot. I like that.
Yeah. It actually sold it more doing it that way.
Yeah, I think so.
He had done it like a Michael Bay kind of crazy action piece.
Well, especially like if you try to do it up close and cover it, you're going to end up with, 13 cuts for the 4 seconds he's in the air. And it wouldn't have, I wouldn't have been able, like that would have just been awful. There was sound design, and then also the music I thought was really interesting in this movie too.
The music was definitely interesting. It seemed to be, I don't know. Each piece of music seemed to be its own thing. It fit the movie.
Yep.
But it seemed like different styles that were used throughout the movie. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
It leaned heavily into being like the Western influence of things. And there were times where the music would lean more into that too.
There's definitely spaghetti Western themes.
Yes.
There was more like, I don't know, was it atonal? Where it's just notes.
Yeah.
And then there's like a traditional action suspense type music. I noticed that was like very interesting how he employed slightly different styles of music throughout the film.
Yeah, I there was one moment where it was like this kind of triumphant music happening as she's riding back into the amusement park or the theme park on the motorcycle, and like the music almost felt discordant because it felt like it was too upbeat and triumphant, but then at first I'm like, oh, I'm not sure it's and by the time she did the Akira slide with the motorcycle, I was like, nope, it's perfect. I loved it. Which I think for single shots, that might be my favorite one, is just that Akira slide on that electric motorcycle with Kiki.
That was pretty cool, yeah. I love the production design of the park.
Yeah.
It's not Disney, but it's Disney.
Yes.
It was great.
Oh, it was so good. This movie it really, I was worried at some point like when it started, I'm like, okay, no, I get what I'm at here. And then when it started to drift from what I initially thought I was watching in tone, I thought I was worried for a short period, like half a scene, that, oh, this might feel a little disjointed. But it really brought itself around, and it kind of came back for me. And it was that overarching theme of spectacle, and everything was this big production. They were, Kiki, Emerald is all talk and flash at the beginning, and she gets into this for the spectacle of it and making some money, and it doesn't end up being that way for her. And like Angel kind of gets involved because of the spectacle of UFOs and the spectacle of all of that, and by the end of it, that's not why he's there anymore, really. Like he's the one that brings up the idea that what they're doing is going to help people and maybe save some people.
Yeah.
And like Antlers gets involved because of this idea of the impossible shot, and he's the one of the four of them that doesn't survive it because he goes all for the spectacle. Like his addiction to that is enough that he can't not just go stand. And like his line about the dream, the impossible dream where you're standing on the mountainside with all eyes looking at you, and then that's how he ends up dying, is standing on a mountainside with everyone looking at him.
I love how it maintained his point of view through the camera lens as he gets sucked up.
Yes. Oh, it was. I loved all that, like Ricky, and the spectacle of what happened to him as a kid, because like it started even before the Gordy's house stuff. He was in a movie and became this big time child star, and then he goes on to a sitcom, and then this thing happens on the sitcom that's now what everybody remembers about that show.
Yeah.
And he kind of embraces the spectacle of all of that, and finds out, oh, I've got this thing and I can feed it horses, and it'll, like I can tame it. I can do what I want. And then you find out, no, you can't tame a predator. Like as OJ says, you got to make a deal with it. And just all of that, like even the spectacle of the opening where when Otis Sr. dies, it's this big thing that happens and we don't see it, right? All we hear things hitting the ground.
Yeah.
And then you find out that like it was a nickel that
I
killed
think it was a quarter.
Or was it a quarter? It was a coin. Like,
and OJ keeps it in an evidence bag nailed to his wall. I thought that was a nice touch.
Yeah, a biohazard bag at that. I did enjoy that. That was a nice thing. But like,
and the key that's stuck into Ghost's hindquarter.
Yep,
was a nice touch.
But the fact that like we saw Otis Sr. sitting on Ghost, and then the camera pans away, and then it pans back, and he's still sitting on him, but now he's just slightly slumped forward, and you're like, oh, he's already,
you know something's wrong.
Yeah, like that ain't right. Like things have gone bad, and just all of it. Like I do think the story of Get Out is a little bit better than this one, but man, this is a good movie. Like this is worth seeing.
Yeah. I wish I could have seen it. In retrospect, I wish I could have seen it on the big screen, but
same. Yeah, I think some of that just to appreciate some of that cinematography, because we have it's not a like super big IMAX, but we have an IMAX screen in town, and I wish I had gone and seen it on that, because that would have been great. But I got to see it at home, and it's still phenomenal. It's one that I'll recommend to people for sure. I think too, because it kind of leans more towards your, again, like Jaws in terms of horror films. It's that type of movie, so it's I think a little bit more accessible too. For your non-horror fans, this is a horror movie you can trick them into watching. So
definitely it.
That's a lot of fun. I did capture a couple of pieces of audio because it wasn't like it wasn't a quippy, quotable movie, but there were just some moments that you can't not have. Like OJ has a couple of great lines. One of them is the bad miracle thing, which I think was in
Right.
trailers. I'm not sure, but it's a gorgeous shot of OJ and Emerald sitting out leaning on the porch at night. It's another day for night shot, and he just asks her,
What's a bad miracle? They got a word for that.
they got a word for that. What? And it just had me thinking, like, is there a word for a bad miracle? I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh man, what a cool, like, again, it's the character of OJ just processing things.
Mm-hmm.
I also loved his oh, go ahead.
No, like I said, that once again, that's just watching him processing information and
Yeah.
reacting in a low key manner.
Yeah, for as restrained as he is outwardly, there's so much going on behind his eyes, and you see it in shots like that one. I also loved his thing with Oprah, and like that was his pinnacle of
shot.
that was his pinnacle of something, as if it was Oprah. And so when he says this,
Yeah.
It's good, but it ain't it. Ain't Oprah.
it ain't it. It ain't Oprah. I was like, oh, that's all. That's getting captured. That was too good. I also loved when he's talking about the animal, when he's talking about, like, you know, he has I didn't capture the line about making a deal with the predator, but it was then he goes on, he's like, you don't turn your back on a bear, you know, you don't wear red around a bull. This thing is big.
They all have rules.
Yeah. And like this thing is big and it's strong and it's got a lot of spirit, like a horse. And then he says,
But anything with a spirit can get broke.
anything with a spirit can get broke. Like,
Yep.
and it's perfect that he's a horse, you know, he's been raising and training horses, because that's how that goes. So I really like that one.
I love how they use the flags as a weapon. They weaponize the flags against the alien.
Well, that was cool because like the flags were like the barrels in Jaws. It was a way to sort of track it, but also slow it down in a different manner. Like in Jaws, they were trying to keep Jaws from the shark from diving, and here they inadvertently had the flags. And I love how his reaction is like, "Yeah, I didn't like the flags. It must have got caught in its esophagus or something, like it choked on it."
And then they translated that to the those inflatable.
That was the wacky inflatable arm flailing man. That was such a cool visual way to do that.
Yeah, and to show when the power would cut out because of the electromagnetic field that it emitted, they would all die down.
Yeah.
Then back up, then die down, to let you know when the predator was near.
Yep. I really, really liked that. I got one Stephen Yeun line, and it was when he's describing, it's just the way he says this about Chris Kattan. I think of all the, because he's talking about the SNL thing, and he's like, you know, he names all the actors, but then it was
Chris goddamn Kattan.
and just, it was just so good. And then, you know, if you're familiar with SNL at all, you would, especially in the 90s, you'd remember Chris Kattan played Mr. Peepers, was it? The monkey character.
Mr. Peepers and Mango.
Yes.
I think those are his two big characters.
Yes. I absolutely had to get some Michael Wincott because that voice is just so when he's this one's just labeled Never Wake because I love this line.
It's the dream you never wake up from.
The dream you never wake up from. Like,
I could listen to that guy read the telephone book, I think.
Yeah. Oh man. And you had him and Keith David in the same movie. Sadly, they didn't get any scenes together, but boy. He's like,
who can out-gravel who?
Yeah. I definitely, there were a few instances of this, but I got one of Daniel Kaluuya just saying, Nope. It's a little tough to hear because he's so soft-spoken throughout the movie.
Yeah.
Which is why him being Hobie in Across the Spider-Verse at first just kind of didn't compute, because I had only seen clips of him from Get Out at that point and like that kind of thing. And then his role in the MCU, and he wasn't overly loud in that. And then all of a sudden he's playing this punk rock Spider-Man. And it was so different from what I was used to with him that I loved it. Angel explaining what UFOs are called now. I loved.
Yeah, well, people started paying attention. So they changed the name to UAPs. No one knows what the a UAP is.
And that's true. I remember the first time I saw that, like in an article or I heard somebody mention UAPs, and I was like, the hell's a UAP?
Yeah, same here.
And then I found out unidentified aerial phenomenon. No, it's a UFO, damn it. Just call it what it is. We have MUFON, right? I guess MUFON might be gone now. I don't know. They were MUFON was like the mutual or something UFO network. It was a big thing of like UFO conspiracy people, and it was a whole network, and it was called MUFON. And I'm like, you're not going to change that to MWAPN. Like that doesn't work. Also, because again, Michael Wincott, it's when she starts playing the music at the end. So they get their stuff all set up, and then she starts up the music with the speakers pointed out, and the music starts playing, and I just love his reaction to it, which is,
How exquisitely stupid is that?
with
That was
just
a cool line.
oh, it's such a good line, and then that great big smile on his face, and I was just so good. And this movie managed to do like creepy and terrifying, like the whole nighttime scene with the storm and the rain, and Jean Jacket like comes over the house. And then all of a
pure nightmare fuel because I wasn't expecting it.
right when stuff starts falling, and then all of a sudden it just starts raining blood all over the house.
Yeah, right. Oh shit. Okay,
I didn't anticipate having 2 movies in a row on this show with scenes of literal raining of blood, because I watched the Evil Dead 2013 remake last week, which has the whole scene at the end where it's literally raining blood. And I'm like, then it started doing it in this movie. It's like, back-to-back weeks, and I get blood rain. All right, cool. Slayer prepared me for this. So
yes, that was well done. The effects were very well done. It definitely caught me by surprise. Reminded me of Spielberg's War of the Worlds a little bit.
yeah, I could see that. I think too what made it work was the consistency of what the house looked like after that, where when you would see like a shot of somebody, Keke Palmer standing at the window, and the window sills on the outside of the house are still stained like that, and like part of the house that was under the covered porch is completely clean, and there's that stark line where it's covered in blood behind there. Yeah. Like they did a good job with the set design too, and the set decoration.
Oh god, yeah.
And that was it. Those were the audio clips I got. But like, yeah, I mean, look, you put Michael Wincott in a movie, I'm gonna probably capture the audio because the guy's voice is just something else.
As long as we're talking about Michael Wincott, I would recommend movie by Julian Schnabel, called Basquiat. Basquiat.
Okay.
Basquiat, about the artist Jean-Michel Basquiat.
Oh, okay.
Great movie. Michael Wincott is in it, and he does a terrific performance. Jeffrey Wright is the main character. He's terrific in it. So if you want to see a cool Michael Wincott performance, I would recommend that.
Definitely. I will look for that. I love seeing him, like, even when he shows up, in something like, I forgot he was in that version of the Count of Monte Cristo from 2002. Along Came a Spider, which is okay. Like but he's in that, and I completely forgot.
Is he the bad guy in that one?
Yeah, he is. But I'll look for that one. Basquiat. Yep, there it is.
Yeah.
1996. Definitely.
I believe that was Julian Schnabel's first film.
Okay.
He went on to do The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, which I haven't seen, but I'm sure it's going to be a great one.
Oh, you mentioned Jeffrey Wright, but Benicio del Toro, David
Jeffrey
Bowie.
Wright's gone on to do, Jeffrey Wright's gone on to do lots of amazing things. He's a terrific Commissioner Gordon.
He's great
in The Batman. But I always remember an actor from the first thing that I saw them in. So every time I see him, I think of Basquiat.
See, I think of all movies, it's the dumbest one to think of for Jeffrey Wright, but Shaft. Because he played Peoples Martinez in Shaft. But man, the cast of this movie, Jeffrey Wright, Michael Wincott, Benicio del Toro, Claire Forlani, Dennis Hopper, David Bowie is Andy Warhol, Gary Oldman, Walken, it's got Christopher Walken.
Yeah.
I'm in.
It's good stuff.
Definitely. This was, great choice. Like, it was another, also, I didn't anticipate doing 2 Jordan Peele movies within a month of each other, but they've both been fantastic. So you definitely chose a good one here. So thanks. Dude, this was fun. I'm so glad to have you on the show and just get a
Thank
chance
you
to
for
chat
having
with
me.
you. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Have you got anything you're working on you want to let people know about or anything like that?
Speaking of paranormal phenomenon and ranches, I'm working on season 5 of Skinwalker Ranch.
Oh.
Which I believe is on the History Channel. The ranch is based in Utah. It's a privately owned ranch, so it has a security force that they are armed. So don't think you're going to go into the property.
No.
You will be asked to leave. But it definitely ties in, funnily enough, with the movie that we just discussed. And that is produced by Prometheus Studios, where I'm currently working.
Awesome. Skinwalker Ranch. Yeah, that was actually one of the fan theories I remember hearing about before this movie came out, that they thought the fan theory was that that it was skinwalkers in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of cool. Awesome. Definitely check that out. History Channel, Skinwalker Ranch.
Yes.
And also, you've got your Instagram for is it PM the Creature Works stuff, the art?
I have 3 accounts.
Okay.
I have my public account is Paul Bots. My private account is PM Boticelli. It's all family stuff. And then my art profile is PMB Creature Works.
PMB Creature Works, that's the one.
If you want to find me, you can find me at any of those 3 accounts.
Definitely check that out. Well, Paul, this has been awesome. We're going to do this again. You're welcome back anytime.
Great.
We'll find another movie. We'll get you back because I don't want to go 20 years between conversations. That's too long. So
Totally.
Thank you so much.
I'd be down for it.
Awesome. If you enjoyed this, I do record the show live on Sunday nights at twitch.tv/TV's Travis. You can come hang out and let us know what you're thinking about stuff. You can be like Phil Rude and JF Dubois and Ace in my chat here. The show comes out as a podcast on Wednesdays, anywhere you get your podcasts, or at YouTube in a video form. So you can check that out. Follow and subscribe on YouTube. It does help the channel grow, which I'm really trying to do, especially this year. I've got a couple of potential on-location live shows I want to do as well.
Cool.
So we'll see how that all works out. But you can go to my site, tvstravis.com, to find the show, to find links to download it, as well as links to, I have merch, and I have a Patreon for this show, patreon.com/WYHS. And you can financially support the show if you so feel as well. But even and especially just word of mouth, spread the word. Let friends of yours know about this show if you're listening, because I appreciate that. I'm a one-man operation. I do everything around here, which is probably why the quality is what it is. But you're here and you're listening, and I appreciate that. But Paul, thank you so much. Next week, I've got somebody coming on, D.W. Lundberg. We're gonna watch. He's never seen Avengers Endgame, which I'm not sure how. Like, I don't know how you don't accidentally see that movie, but he hasn't, and we're gonna watch it. So we'll get their take on it and see what they think. So that'll be next week. But until then, Paul, thank you again so much for being here. This has been awesome, and we'll definitely do it again sometime. Absolutely.
Totally.
We'll find another movie, maybe one a little bit older. I'm sure I can dig back through the archives and find something you haven't seen before. Or maybe we'll have you back for Basquiat, and I can watch that for the first time.
Sweet.
Excellent. Until then, this has been Wait You Haven't Seen. Remember to enjoy your movies, and hey, let's be excellent to each other, all right?
He was a one-eyed, one-horned, flying